What if we could completely change how we discover new medicines? I mean, make the whole process faster, way cheaper, and a lot more accurate. Well, the answer might just be smaller than your thumb drive. Today, we're diving into the incredible world of organ-on-a-chip technology. And believe me, it has the promise to change medicine as we know it.
But first, to really get why this tech is such a big deal, we have to talk about a massive, and I mean massive, problem that's been holding back the pharmaceutical industry for years. It's a crisis that costs billions and keeps life-saving treatments from getting to the people who need them.
Just look at this number, 90%. That is the absolutely staggering failure rate for new drugs once they get to human clinical trials. Think about that. 9 out of every 10 drugs that look promising in the lab fail. They either turn out to be unsafe for humans or they just don't work. The huge question is, why? Why is the failure rate so high?
Well, for decades, we've basically been relying on two main tools. On one side, you have animal models. They're not only super expensive and ethically complicated, but let's be honest, a mouse is not a human. They often give us the wrong answers about how a drug will act in our bodies. Then on the other side, you've got cells grown in a flat petri dish. Sure, it's faster, but it's a huge oversimplification. It's like trying to understand a city by looking at a single brick. It just misses the whole picture, the complex 3D world of a real organ. And these limitations, they're a major reason for that 90% failure rate.
Okay, so this is where things get really cool. What if you could bridge that gap between a petri dish and a person? What if you could test drugs on a model that acts just like a human lung, or a liver, or a heart, but without ever needing an actual human volunteer?
So, say hello to the organ on a chip. And yeah, it's pretty much what it sounds like. It's this small, clear polymer chip, maybe the size of a USB stick, and inside it has these tiny, hollow channels lined with living human cells. You can then pump fluids like nutrients or even a drug you're testing through these channels. This encourages the cells to organize and function just like they would inside a real human organ. You're creating a living, breathing, miniature biological system right there on a chip. It's amazing.
The advantages here are just massive. I mean, they give us a much better picture of human biology than anything we've had before. They offer a powerful and frankly more ethical alternative to all that animal testing. And here's the real game changer. Because they can be made using cells from a specific patient, they open the door to true personalized medicine. We could test which drug will work best for you before you ever take a single pill.
So with all this incredible potential, you gotta ask a pretty obvious question, right?
Seriously, why isn't every pharma lab and university using these chips for everything? Well, to figure that out, a team of researchers went out and did over 100 interviews with experts from every corner of the industry. We're talking scientists in the lab, investors, startup founders, you name it.
And this heat map, this just brilliantly sums up what they found. What's so fascinating is that the biggest hurdles weren't these deep, complex scientific problems you might expect. No. If you look at the brightest spots, those yellows and pinks, they're all clustered around things like usability, reproducibility, and standardization. The biggest problems were surprisingly practical.
Yep, across the board, no matter who they talked to, the conversation kept coming back to these three core issues. The chips were often just too complicated for the average lab tech to use, the results you got in one lab couldn't be reliably repeated in another lab down the street, and there were simply no common rules, no standards for how to build them, run them, or even evaluate the data they produced.
This quote from one of the interviews just hits the nail on the head. If your data isn't reliable and reproducible, you can forget about getting investors interested. And if you don't have clear standards, you're never going to get regulators like the FDA to sign off on using this tech for official drug submissions. These practical, everyday roadblocks were literally holding back a scientific revolution.
But here's the good news. These are totally solvable problems. In fact, there's a huge global effort already happening, bringing together the world's top scientific and regulatory groups to create a universal blueprint for the future of this technology.
So really, what this all boils down to is creating a common language. We need a universal set of rules for literally everything, from the plastics used to make the chip to how you collect and report the data. The whole point is to make sure that a result from a lab in Berlin is 100% comparable to a result from a lab in Boston.
And there's a really clear roadmap to get there. It starts with the basics, standardizing the very words we use to talk about this stuff. Then, you move on to qualifying the platforms for specific jobs, basically certifying that a liver chip actually acts like a human liver. After that, you standardize the experiments themselves, and finally, you standardize the engineering and design of the chips. It's a step-by-step plan. Now, a brilliant part of this engineering plan is modularity. Just think of it like Lego for science. The idea is to create standard parts that can be easily connected, swapped out, and scaled up. This makes the whole system so much easier to use and adapt, whether you're a small academic lab or a huge company screening thousands of drugs.
And look, this isn't some small group working in a basement. All of the heavy hitters are at the table. We're talking about global standards organizations like ISO, working hand in hand with powerful agencies like the FDA. This is a massive, coordinated, global push to build this framework and finally unlock this technology's full potential.
So let's just imagine for a second that this plan succeeds. What does that future actually look like? If we solve these practical problems of usability and standardization, what kind of new era for medicine are we looking at?
Well, the impact would be nothing short of transformative. We are talking about a world where new drugs are developed faster and more successfully, which would slash the costs of healthcare. A world where our reliance on animal testing drops dramatically. And, maybe the most exciting part, a world of true personalized medicine, where treatments for things like cancer could be tested on a chip containing your cells to find the perfect therapy just for you.
The basic science is here. It works. Now, by focusing on solving these practical, real-world challenges of standardization and collaboration, we are right on the verge of turning all of this incredible potential into a reality. The answer to some of medicine's biggest, most expensive problems might just be found on the smallest of scales.